Hello, and welcome to Lesson 3. In this lesson, we are going to be talking about the Rolling Stones and the sound that they offered and style that they offered that opposed to those of the Beatles. The group was founded by Mick Jagger, and they were a part of the flourishing R&B sound that was in London that I mentioned earlier around the late 1950s and the early 1960s. This band took its name from a Muddy Waters song, Rolling Stone, and by 1963, the group was solidified and included Mick Jagger, guitarist Keith Richards, Brian Jones, and bass player Bill Wyman, and drummer Charlie Watts. Although the Stones were fighting to be on top against the Beatles, ironically, they landed their first break from a former agent of the Beatles' agent Epstein, Andrew Oldham, and they were even endorsed by the Beatles' own George Harrison to get their first recording deal with Decca Records. And they also had their first hit be a cover of Lennon and McCartney's I Want to Be Your Man. However, to compete with the Beatles, they had to create a counter image. And this counter image was more rebellious, and they had more shaggy hair than the Beatles' cute little short shaggy hair that we know, but theirs was longer. And a few other distinctions was their R&B style sound from the Black Chicago R&B scene, and they were more sexually implicit than the Beatles. The Beatles, as everybody knew them to be, was the young, youthful, soft, adolescent nature that made them more palatable, and the Rolling Stones kind of pushed against that. And in the middle of 1964, the Rolling Stones failed their first attempt to invade America's music scene, as they didn't quite gain the traction that they were looking for. But with their second tour, they didn't let that stop them. So they kept going, and Mick Jagger and Keith Richards became a songwriting duo just like Lennon and McCartney. And they cooked up their first hit, Satisfaction. And they dropped their first album, 12 by 5, that featured a song called Time Is On My Side that climbed to number 6 on the US music charts. The Stones had a hard time getting their albums to catch, but they continued to produce songs, hit songs actually, through 1967. And in the late 1960s, they demonstrated their interest in occults with their song Sympathy for the Devil. And soon their concerts became a home for destruction and violence after they gave a disastrous performance in San Francisco at the Altamont Speedway. Jagger hired very loose security that featured the Hells Angels motorcycle gang, and the concert resulted in multiple accounts of riots, beatings, stabbings, and unfortunately the death of 4 people. This indulgent lifestyle caught up to them, and starting with the tragic death of one of their previous guitarists that they had to fire due to a drug addiction, Brian Jones, and this happened in 1969. Their concerts remained a place of violence and chaos, as it kind of became a tradition to concert goers, and they continued to promote the lifestyle of sex and drugs throughout the 1970s. However, their drug obsession began their downfall in their career in the 1970s, but they did end up having a comeback in 1978. And in 1983, they left their Atlantic label and they joined CBS. So after this, Jagger, Richards, and Watts all worked on solo projects, which made many industry experts think that they were breaking up. However, they kept emerging with infrequent but very extremely successful concerts that really annoyed the industry experts, which I think is kind of funny. But yeah, that's the Rolling Stones.